But anyways, the San Francisco Shock, they made actually some changes, with the whole team. Maybe a little bit of a budget issue, but I highly doubt it, being back-to-back champions. So you have right here, Casores joins as analyst and actually gets promoted later. Then you have Arachne, he obviously goes to the Guangzhou Charge. Rascal's gone, huge L, but they're fine. Then you have Casores, like I said, already promoted. Agape joins as assistant coach. Very surprising, but I like it. He obviously coached London Spitfire in the past. Obviously had an up and down here and there when he came to the London Spitfire. Now he's going to the Shock. I actually like it. And he's going to hopefully learn a lot on the Shock. Same thing goes with Casores, being on this top tier of a team. They're great coaches. Fantastic coaches coming as a replacement. Now, do I think Junkmonk and Arachne is better? Absolutely. But Shock really, works up coaches to be some top tier coaches, and I'm excited to see what he does with Casores, or Shock, I should say, he does with Casores and Agape. Moth leaves, huge L, but they actually got FDGod. Now, I will say, when we get to it, slight downgrade, but like FDGod's still top tier. Like they don't really lose that much with FDGod joining. Then you have Rascal's replacement, Nero. I love it. Glister comes in. We all question it at first. Then we go to the 2021. Ants retires. We're no longer questioning why Glister was signed. But honestly, it was kind of like somewhat expected, but we still had hope, obviously, for Ants staying. Now, when it comes to it, the roster, they also have to make some changes because players have left, players that got released. So let's go and talk about the new signings first. Glister, I'm really excited to see what Glister does next season for the San Francisco Shock. He was a top player for the London Spitfire. Now, I do hope he does have better performances on the Shock. I do think that is almost a guarantee. Hopefully it comes through. Hopefully he's not inconsistent at all. I do think Glister is a really good replacement for Ants. Is he going to be as good as Ants? I honestly don't think he will be. Like, Ants was something else. He was a very surprising player on how good his Widowmaker was. Like, his hit scan play all around. Like, Ants was top tier. And now will Glister do that? I hope he does. Like, Glister and Ants, that's a huge competition right there. Because Glister, he can play almost everything, in the game. Like, he can play all the hit scans. You can play all the flex DPS occasionally. Glister, I think Glister's going to come through as hopefully a top hit scan player, I will say. Then we have Nero. I like this. I like to see Nero come through on the Shock. He's finally going to get, a time to shine in the Overwatch League. He was on the Charge, didn't surprisingly get a lot of playtime. He really didn't. And I do hope we'll see a lot more on the Shock. And I think it's almost guaranteed that he will get a lot of playtime on the Shock. His Doom is crazy, his Pharah is crazy, his Genji's good, his Hanzo's good. All around a solid flex DPS player as we've known from the past. Now he's going to be in the Shock, and hopefully Krusty and the coaches really make him to be this top tier flex DPS player. And I think that's going to be the case. Then you have FDGod coming in as a replacement for Moth, and I love this signing. Like, FDGod, a lot of people aren't talking about it, but FDGod is really going to change this team. The reason I say that is because Moth was not a super aggressive player. He was kind of in the middle, more on the passive side of a main support player, which I 100% I get it. But FDGod is a super aggressive main support player that's really going to change this team. Like, his main support play, his Lucio play mainly, is going to change this team a lot. They're going to play way more faster. The games are going to go by way faster now with FDGod on this roster. Like, the aggressive plays and everything this team's going to have next season is going to be crazy. And that makes me think almost it's like even with Moth. Like, FDGod coming in, as a replacement for Moth, they aren't losing that much. And I see a lot of people hate on FDGod. Like, FDGod's a huge downgrade over Moth. Like, it's not, though. It's not at all. If anything, it's going to help them a little bit more of how aggressive FDGod is. And I'd love to see how that turns out next season. Now, I hope that actually does come true. But if FDGod coming in as a super aggressive player, make this team super aggressive, though. Now we have Taiyo. I wish I had something to speak about Taiyo here, but Taiyo was like a panic signing, and they don't want to really admit that, but we can tell it was kind of a panic signing. Like, Rascal at the start of the Genji meta was not the greatest Genji, but obviously we knew from the past Rascal had a really good Genji. Now Taiyo was there. He played the Genji for the team for a little bit. He looked all right. Now, I do think Taiyo may get playtime. May get some playtime here. Now, obviously, that could be potentially going against weaker teams in double hit scan meta, potentially playing over Striker or Glister, over Nero potentially. Like, I really don't see Taiyo getting that much playtime. Now, do I think the guy deserves to be in the league? Absolutely. Do I think he can get traded to other teams? Absolutely as well. You know, maybe the Vancouver Titans, if Terra doesn't work out that well, and maybe some other teams all around like Taiyo, has potential. Now, can he show that potential on the Shock? I don't know. But anything can happen. Something bad can happen to Nero, like he's not so good on another hero. Taiyo comes in over that and he gets his playtime. But it's up in the air. Then we have Twilight. I hope we get to see this guy. I hope we get to see this guy play a lot more next season. Like, he was a top player on Vancouver, and he went to the Shock and was mainly there for the double flex port meta, and he did his job. He's still a top flex port player, and I'm excited to see what he does for the Shock in next season. Then you have Striker, in my opinion, potentially the best player in the league right now. If anything, the best DPS player in the league, straight up. Like, this guy, he wanted to win last season for the Shock. Like, you can't tell me he didn't. Like, if you watch those VODs once again, even live, like, I never seen Striker focus so hard with him not, you know, hearing him talk or him beside me. Like, I can normally tell if someone's focusing if they're right beside me, but like Striker, I can tell from his gameplay. I can tell he played, how he positioned, how he played all around. Striker was wanting to win last season. I think he's going to do the exact same thing again next season. Like, Striker wants to get the back-to-back championships, and I hope Shock never loses this guy, because Striker is a keeper. You want to keep Striker, one of the best players of all time in the Overwatch League so far. Then you have Violet, also another top flex sport player in the league, next to Twilight on this roster, which is absolutely crazy. And I love to see Twilight get more of the playtime, but they've worked with Violet for seasons now. So Violet's still going to be that top flex sport player. Nothing much to really talk about. It's going to be like the same thing. We already seen these guys win, so we know how good they are. Smurf, top main tank player. His Winston's crazy good. Like, that's all I got to say. Like, Smurf is a crazy main tank player on the Orisa, occasionally on the Rhine, and also on the Winston. Like, Smurf is going to be another top tier main tank player. Now, whatever meta we're in, I'd love to see how that comes through. You know, we could see if there's a Reinhardt meta, Super's going to play. If it's a hardcore Winston Orisa meta, Smurf's going to play. Now we have Choi Hyobin, top off tank player. If Choi was go to any other team, Choi's going to be another top off tank player on that team as well. Like, Choi, we know how good this guy is. He's been playing since the Shock for season 1. I don't know if any of y'all know that, but Choi's been here since season 1. And he's proved himself for all those seasons now. And I'm excited to see how Choi plays once again with these new signings around him. Then you have Super. I love the guy. Do I think he's going to get playtime? If there's ever a meta for him. If there's ever a Ryan meta, Super's going to play. If they go against weaker teams, they can probably play, but you can tell Shock when they went against weaker teams, they didn't want to have that mindset. Oh, we're going to win already. We're going to win. No, they didn't have that mindset at all. They wanted to go all in. They kept their normal roster in and won instantly. So I think all around, Shock's roster, Shock's signings are insanely good. Coaching staff, we already talked about it, Krusty. If Shock ever gets rid of this guy, huge L. But anything can happen, because Sora's good coach from what we've seen in the past, also in contenders. Him being on the Shock's going to be good. Then you have Agape. I really like this one. Agape can learn a lot on the Shock and come through. I think Shock's still going to be a top team. There's nothing changing here. I think FDGod's someone we still need to be looking at. Like, FDGod's may change this team a lot. But chat, what are your final thoughts here on this team? I think it's kind of obvious they're going to be a top tier team. But I love the signings. I love what they did with the replacements. I'm excited next season. Do you think they will miss at Moth, or is FDGod just as good? FDGod is just as good. They're not going to miss Moth. Now, the one thing they will probably miss of Moth is his shot calling. Like, Moth shot calling was just something else. Like, this guy did a lot, as we heard from inside of other players. Like, Moth was really good shot caller before the game started, in the middle of a game, when there was some downtime. Like, Moth, that's what they will probably miss the most. But maybe FDGod has that. Maybe Smurf has that. Maybe Choi. Like, maybe some of these players already kind of have that. I'm excited to see how things turn out. I do think there is some shot calling issues potentially, but I don't think things are going to change that much. But anyways, that is my whole opinion on Shock. they're still going to be top tier.